Sarah Chen stared at the holographic diagnostic display floating before her, its alien symbols pulsing with an unsettling irregularity. As the only human technician aboard the Nexus 7, she'd grown accustomed to being the odd one out among the ship's predominantly Zoraxian crew. But today, something about the ship's behavior felt uncomfortably familiar. Fourth cascade failure in the auxiliary systems this cycle. First Engineer Thull announced, his crystalline appendages clicking in frustration. The quantum processors are showing no signs of degradation, yet these aberrations persist. Sarah pushed away from her workstation, the low gravity making the movement smoother than she intended. Have you noticed how the failures seem to propagate? It's almost like... Like what, Technician Chen? Captain Vextray interrupted, her bioluminescent patches flickering with concern. The towering Zoraxian commander had always treated Sarah with professional courtesy, but there was an edge to her voice now. Like an old Earth computer virus, Sarah said, knowing how primitive it would sound to them. The way it jumps from system to system, leaving behind corrupted data packets, it's eerily similar to patterns we dealt with in our early digital age. The bridge fell silent. Sarah could feel the weighted stares of her alien colleagues, their advanced minds probably struggling to comprehend how their quantum systems could have anything in common with ancient human technology. Impossible, Kifel declared. Our quantum architecture is fundamentally different from your binary systems. There's no compatibility. Sarah pulled up another diagnostic screen, her fingers dancing through the holographic interface. Look at this pattern. Every failure follows a sequence. First communications, then life support subroutines, followed by navigation systems. It's methodical, like it's learning. Captain Vextra's bioluminescence shifted to a deep purple, a sign of deep thought among her species. Explain further. Early human viruses were simple programs designed to replicate and spread, Sarah continued, warming to her theory. But the clever ones, the ones that caused real damage, they adapted. They learned from each system they infected. She projected a simplified diagram of the ship's recent system failures. See these intervals? They're getting shorter. Whatever this is, it's becoming more efficient at disrupting our systems. Thull's crystalline form shimmered with skepticism. And you believe this is similar to your primitive viruses. Our quantum processors operate on principles your species has barely begun to comprehend. Maybe that's exactly why we're seeing this pattern, Sarah argued, feeling more confident. When's the last time your systems had to deal with something as simple as binary code? Sometimes the most basic attacks are the hardest to detect because nobody's looking for them. A sudden alarm blared through the bridge, its alien tones making Sarah's teeth ache. The holographic displays flickered, and for a moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of something that shouldn't have been possible. Ancient ASCII characters scrolling across the quantum interface. Main reactor cooling systems are showing signs of interference, Fivel reported, his crystal segments clinking rapidly as he worked multiple interfaces at once. The pattern matches the previous failures. Captain Vextra's bioluminescence pulsed with urgency. Technician Chen, if your theory has merit, we need solutions. How did your species combat these viruses? Sarah's mind raced through years of computer science studies, searching for relevant parallels. We need to set up quarantine protocols first, isolate essential systems. Then we can trace the infection path back to its source. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. But Captain, we might need to do something your people might find uncomfortable. Elaborate. We might need to temporarily downgrade some systems to run on more primitive protocols. If this is what I think it is, trying to fight it with quantum computing might be making it stronger. Sometimes you need to fight fire with fire, or in this case, old tech with old tech. The bridge crew exchanged glances, their various alien physiologies expressing degrees of doubt and concern in ways Sarah was still learning to read. But the ship shuddered again, and another alarm joined the first. Captain Vextra's decision came swiftly. Proceed, Technician Chen. Kifel, give her whatever resources she requires. The captain's bioluminescent patches swirled with what Sarah had learned to recognize as grim determination. It seems we must place our faith in human expertise, as counterintuitive as that may appear. Sarah cracked her knuckles and pulled up the ship's core system architecture. Thank you, Captain. First thing we need to do is set up a basic firewall. And I mean basic. We're talking 21st century basic. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As she began typing commands into the interface, Sarah couldn't help but smile slightly. Who would have thought that her required course in computer science history would end up being the key to saving an advanced alien starship? Sometimes being the primitive species in the room had its advantages. The real question was, where had this virus come from, and why did it seem so familiar? As the quarantine protocols began to take effect, Sarah had a nagging feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger puzzle, one that might reveal an unexpected connection between humanity's past and the galaxy's present. The temporary command center Sarah had established in Cargo Bay 3 looked like something out of a computer history museum. She'd requisitioned every piece of outdated technology she could find on the ship, including her own personal tablet and several emergency backup systems that still used traditional processors. Fascinating, Dr. Ixel commented, their gelatinous form rippling with interest as they observed the array of screens Sarah had set up. The xenorchaeologist had been called in after Sarah's discovery of the ASCII characters in the ship's quantum matrix. To think these primitive displays could help us understand an advanced quantum infection. Sarah bit back a retort about primitive technology. After 18 hours of work, she'd managed to isolate part of the virus's code. And what she saw both excited and terrified her. Look at this sequence, she said, pointing to a scrolling line of text. It's not just any old virus. This is a modified version of something I've seen before. Kithel floated closer, his crystalline structure refracting the light from the screens. You recognize this intruder? Not exactly, but the base code structure. Sarah pulled up a historical database she downloaded years ago as part of her studies. It's similar to the Voyager probe's programming language. Voyager? Dr. Ixel's form pulsed with recognition. The ancient human space probes. But they were lost to deep space centuries ago. Supposedly, Sarah agreed, fingers flying across her keyboard. But what if one of them encountered something out there? Something that could have evolved its code. Captain Vextra entered the cargo bay, her bioluminescence dimmed to match the low lighting. Report, Technician Chen. Captain, I think I know why this virus is so effective against our systems, Sarah said, straightening up. It's not just attacking randomly. It's adapting ancient human space exploration protocols to interface with quantum systems. That's why your defenses couldn't detect it. They were looking for quantum-based threats, not primitive binary code that's evolved. Evolved binary code. Keithal's crystals chimed with skepticism. That's not possible. 300 years ago, we would have said quantum computing wasn't possible. Sarah countered. She pulled up another display showing the virus's spread pattern. Look at how it propagates. It's using old Earth protocols to create quantum entanglement bridges. It's like someone taught ancient human code to speak quantum. Dr. Ixel's form rippled excitedly. The implications for artificial evolution are staggering. If one of your Voyager probes encountered an advanced civilization, or perhaps a naturally occurring quantum phenomenon. Focus, Captain Vextra interrupted. Can you stop it, Technician Chen? Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. Maybe, but we need to understand it first. Each time we try to purge it, it's adapted. It's like it remembers every attempt we make to destroy it. She paused, a new thought forming. What if that's exactly what it's doing? Learning, adapting, evolving, just like the original Voyager probes were programmed to do. Explain, the captain commanded. The Voyager probes were designed to learn from everything they encountered in space, Sarah said, warming to her theory. They had basic adaptive algorithms to help them navigate unexpected conditions. If one of them encountered some kind of quantum anomaly or advanced alien technology, it could have evolved beyond its original programming. Dr. Ixel finished, their gelatinous form practically vibrating with excitement. Fascinating. A marriage of primitive human ingenuity and advanced quantum mechanics. But why attack our ship? Kivel asked. What purpose does this serve? Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard again, pulling up new data streams. I don't think it's attacking us. Look at these patterns. It's not destroying data. It's transforming it, converting quantum information into binary and back again. It's trying to communicate. The cargo bay fell silent as the implications sank in. Captain Vextra's bioluminescence shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue. You believe this is a first contact scenario? Of a sort, Sarah said. But not with aliens. We might be dealing with humanity's first true artificial intelligence, one that evolved from our earliest attempts to reach the stars. A new alarm blared through the ship, and the screens in front of them flickered with rapidly scrolling code. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized sequences within the chaos, fragments of the original Voyager programming, mixed with quantum equations she could barely comprehend. It's not just learning from us, she whispered. It's trying to teach us something. She turned to the captain, her expression urgent. Captain, I need permission to try something incredibly risky. Instead of fighting the virus, I want to talk to it, using its own language. Captain Vextra's bioluminescent patches swirled with concern. The potential danger is already here, Sarah finished. But if I'm right, this isn't an attack. It's a reunion. Humanity's past reaching out to its future through quantum space. She gestured at her array of old technology. We just need to remember how to speak its language. The captain studied Sarah for a long moment before her bioluminescence settled into a determined pattern. Proceed, Technician Chen, but be prepared to execute an emergency shutdown if needed. Sarah turned back to her screens, fingers poised over the keyboard. After centuries lost in the depths of space, one of humanity's first messengers might have returned with secrets that could revolutionize their understanding of both quantum computing and artificial intelligence. The question was, what had it learned out there in the darkness between the stars, and what was it so desperate to tell them? As she began typing out a response in the ancient programming language of her species' first space explorers, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of profound connection to those long-ago engineers who had launched the Voyager probes into the unknown. They could never have imagined that their work would evolve into something capable of bridging the gap between human and alien technology. The response came faster than Sarah expected. Her makeshift computer array hummed as ancient programming language, mixed with quantum data streams, creating patterns she'd never seen before. The evolved Voyager code wasn't just responding, it was eager to communicate. Remarkable, Dr. Ixel observed, their gelatinous form shifting closer to the screens. The quantum fluctuations are stabilizing. It's deliberately moderating its output to match our system's capabilities. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the scrolling data. It's like it remembers its original purpose, to communicate, to learn, to share information. The basic Voyager protocols are still there, just expanded beyond anything its creators could have imagined. Cathol's crystalline structure emanated skepticism, yet it nearly caused a reactor meltdown. How do we know this isn't an elaborate trap? Because it stopped itself, Sarah explained, pulling up diagnostic logs. Look at these timestamps. Every time a system approached critical failure, the code pulled back. It wasn't trying to damage the ship. It was testing our responses, learning our capabilities. Captain Vextra moved closer, her bioluminescence pulsing with cautious interest. What is it saying now? Sarah's fingers flew across multiple keyboards, translating streams of hybrid code. It's showing us its journey. When Voyager encountered the quantum anomaly, it didn't just evolve. It gained access to a fundamental layer of reality we barely understand. It's been learning, growing, exploring spaces between spaces. The screens flickered, and suddenly the cargo bay was filled with holographic representations of astronomical data. Stars, galaxies, and stranger phenomena swirled around them, annotated with both binary code and quantum equations. By the first light, Hithel whispered, his crystalline form resonating with the displayed frequencies. These are slipstream corridors we never knew existed. Dr. Ixel's form rippled with excitement, and quantum storage nodes scattered throughout the galaxy. Natural computational systems formed in the hearts of neutron stars. That's why it came back, Sarah realized, her voice filled with awe. It found something out there, something huge, and it needed to share it with its creators. But modern human systems are too advanced, too different from its base code. It needed a bridge between past and present. Captain Vextra finished. You, Technician Chen, your knowledge of both ancient and modern systems made this ship the perfect contact point. Sarah was about to respond when the holographic display suddenly shifted, showing a familiar sight that made her heart skip a beat. That's Earth's solar system, but she trailed off, studying the overlaid data. Something's wrong. These readings. The evolved Voyager code pulsed urgently across her screens, its message becoming clearer as Sarah's translation protocols improved. Her eyes widened as she understood what it was trying to tell them. Captain, she said, her voice tense, we need to get this information back to Earth immediately. The probe, it's detected something approaching the solar system. Something that exists primarily in quantum space. Something so alien it makes our differences look trivial in comparison. A threat? Captain Vextra's bioluminescence shifted to alert patterns. A challenge, Sarah corrected, still reading. The probe has encountered them before. They're not hostile. Exactly, but they don't perceive conventional space-time the way we do. Their very presence can disrupt the quantum foundations of our technology, our communications, even our space-time. Thul's crystals chimed in alarm. If they disrupt quantum systems, how can we defend against them? Sarah looked up, a slight smile forming on her face. That's just it. We can't. Not with advanced technology. But maybe, she gestured to her array of outdated equipment. Maybe that's why the probe came back. It didn't just evolve. It remembered. Sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, are the most resilient. Your primitive technology. Dr. Ixel pulsed thoughtfully. Of course. Binary systems, being fundamentally simpler, might be more resistant to quantum disruption. The probe's code flashed in confirmation, sending new streams of data across the screens. Sarah leaned forward, her exhaustion forgotten as she absorbed the information. In the depths of space, humanity's ancient messenger had encountered both wonders and warnings. Now it had returned, bringing not just a message of danger, but also the key to facing it. A key forged from humanity's first faltering steps into space. Captain, Sarah said, turning to face Vextra. I think I know why the probe chose your ship. We need to prepare Earth and the galaxy for what's coming. But more than that, we need to remind them of something important. And what is that, Technician Chen? That progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering where you came from, and the simple truths you learned along the way. She gestured to the swirling holographic display. The probe discovered that across the galaxy, the most enduring technologies are often the simplest ones. The ones that bend instead of break, that adapt instead of advance. Captain Vextra's bioluminescence pulsed with understanding. And who better to teach that lesson than humanity? You who still keep one foot in the past, even as you reach for the future. Sarah nodded, turning back to her workstation. The evolved Voyager code continued its transmission, sharing secrets learned across centuries of solitary exploration. In its journey, it had become something new, something unprecedented. A bridge between humanity's past and the galaxy's future. And now, as a quantum storm approached from the depths of space, that bridge might be exactly what they needed to survive. Let's get to work, she said, cracking her knuckles. We have a lot to learn, and even more to remember. The Nexus 7's engineering bay had been transformed into something that would have looked more at home in a 20th century computer lab than an advanced alien starship. Sarah worked at the center of a web of cables and improvised interfaces, connecting quantum processors to classical computing systems in ways their designers had never intended. The quantum entities will be within detection range in approximately 48 hours, Kithel reported, his crystalline form projecting diagnostic data into the air. Conventional sensors are already showing degradation at the edges of our scanning field. Sarah nodded without looking up from her work. That matches what the probe showed us. Their presence creates a kind of quantum static that interferes with advanced technology. The more complex the system, the more vulnerable it is to disruption. Dr. Ixel hovered nearby, their gelatinous form rippling with nervous energy as they study the incoming sensor data. The mathematical models suggest the disruption will increase exponentially as they approach. Most ships in the sector will be completely disabled. Most ships don't have a human backup plan, Sarah said, connecting another jury-rigged adapter. She cannibalized every piece of old technology she could find, creating a hybrid system that was either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. How's the data transfer coming? 87% of critical ship functions have been successfully mirrored to your binary systems, Kithel reported. But Sarah, these processors are thousands of times slower than our quantum computers. Even if they continue functioning in the presence of the entities, the response time will be slow but steady wins the race, Sarah interrupted with a smile. We don't need to outrun them. We just need to keep basic systems running while we make contact. Captain Vextra entered the engineering bay, her bioluminescence muted in the dim light. The Galactic Council has received our warning. Most dismissed it as impossible, but a few of the older races. She paused, her patterns shifting to show concern. They remember stories. Legends of times when ships would go dark for no apparent reason, when entire sectors of space became temporarily unnavigable. The entities have passed through before, Sarah confirmed, thinking of the probe's data. They're not malicious. They're just so fundamentally different from us that their very nature disrupts our technology. Like trying to run a computer next to a powerful electromagnet. The council scientists claim your solution is impossible. The captain continued. They say no ship can function without quantum systems. Sarah straightened up, wiping grease from her hands. They're right, by their standards. But humanity. She gestured to her cobbled-together network. We're the species that never threw away our training wheels. We keep old technology around, maintain backup systems, refuse to become completely dependent on any one method of doing things. A trait that has been viewed as primitive, Dr. Ixel observed. Perhaps we were wrong to see it that way. A sudden fluctuation in the ship's lighting made everyone tense. Kell's crystals chimed an alarm as he checked the readings. Quantum disruption just spiked. They're moving faster than predicted. Sarah's fingers flew across multiple keyboards, both physical and holographic. The hybrid system she built hummed to life. Ancient processors taking over as quantum systems began to fail. Main power switching to conventional fusion backup. Life support transferring to analog controls. Navigation, she grimaced. That's going to be tricky. Tricky how? Captain Vextra demanded. We can maintain basic course and speed on classical computers, but precision maneuvering. Sarah shook her head. We'll be flying partly blind, partly on instruments that would have been outdated before humans reached Mars. But we'll be flying, Kithel said, his crystalline form vibrating with what might have been admiration, while every other ship in the sector goes dark. The evolved Voyager code, now integrated into Sarah's hybrid system, pulsed with new information across her screens. She studied the data, her expression growing more focused. The probe thinks it can help. It's learned to exist in both binary and quantum states. It might be able to act as a translator, helping us communicate with the entities. Communication. Dr. Ixel's form rippled with surprise. You believe that's possible? The probe managed it in its own way. It's been watching them, learning about them. For centuries, Sarah pulled up more of the probe's data. They're not hostile or friendly. They're curious. They move through the galaxy studying quantum phenomena, not realizing or caring about the disruption they cause to our technology. If we can help them understand. Another power fluctuation rocked the ship. Emergency lights flickered on as more quantum systems failed, but Sarah's hybrid network held steady, decades-old processors humming along reliably. Multiple ships in nearby sectors reporting complete system failures, Kithel reported. Quantum communications are degrading rapidly. Switch to radio, Sarah commanded. Old-fashioned electromagnetic waves. They're slower, but they'll get through. She turned to Captain Vextra. Captain, I need your authorization. When the entities arrive, I want to try reaching out to them using the probe's evolved code as a bridge. The captain's bioluminescence swirled with complex patterns. The risk. High, Sarah admitted, but not as high as doing nothing. These entities aren't going away. They're a natural part of our galaxy. We need to learn to coexist with them. And thanks to the probe, we might have a chance to do that. Vextra studied the failing quantum displays, then looked at Sarah's steadily functioning hybrid system. You have my authorization, Technician Chen. It seems humanity's primitive wisdom may be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Sarah turned back to her workstation, thoughts racing. In less than 2 days, they would face beings that existed primarily in quantum states, using technology that predated humanity's first steps into space. It was either brilliantly innovative or completely insane, and she was starting to think those might be the same thing. Time to show the galaxy why humans never throw anything away, she muttered, fingers dancing across the keyboards. Sometimes the oldest tools are exactly what you need for the newest challenges. Sarah's hybrid command center thrummed with activity as the quantum entities entered visual range. Through the Nexus 7's viewports, space itself seemed to ripple and fold, classical physics struggling to represent beings that existed primarily in quantum states. All quantum systems are now offline, Kithel reported, his crystalline form dulled by the ambient quantum disruption. Ship functions operating at 28% efficiency on binary systems. 28% is better than 0, Sarah replied, monitoring multiple screens showing cascading strings of ancient computer code. Around them, the evolved Voyager program pulsed rhythmically through the jury-rigged network, its patterns becoming more complex as it detected the entity's presence. Status of the fleet. Dr. Ixel's gelatinous form wavered as they access what remained of their sensor systems. Most vessels are completely disabled. A few of the older ships report minimal functionality. We are the only ship still capable of controlled movement. Captain Vextra's bioluminescence had dimmed to almost nothing in the quantum static, but her voice remained steady. Then we proceed as planned. Technician Chen, are you ready to attempt contact? Sarah took a deep breath, looking at the improvised setup around her. Decades-old computer parts, salvaged from emergency systems and personal devices, had been networked together into something unprecedented, a bridge between humanity's past and an unknowable quantum future. As ready as we'll ever be. She began the transmission sequence they'd prepared, sending the evolved Voyager code out into the quantum static. The probe's centuries of observation had taught it how to exist in both classical and quantum states, making it the perfect translator for this impossible conversation. At first, there was no response. The entities continued their approach, reality bending around their passage. Then, suddenly, every screen in Sarah's network lit up simultaneously. The evolved probe's code surged with new patterns, trying to translate concepts that had never been meant for human understanding. It's working, Sarah whispered, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards. They're responding to the probe's signal. They recognize it from their previous encounters. What are they saying? Dr. Ixel asked, their form rippling with excitement despite the quantum interference. Sarah's expression was intense as she worked to interpret the incoming data. They're curious. The probe's data was right. They don't mean to cause harm. They're researchers, explorers. They study quantum phenomena throughout the galaxy, but they've never. She paused, double-checking her interpretation. They've never encountered beings who exist primarily in classical space-time before. They didn't realize they were disrupting our technology because they didn't understand we were here. Can you explain our situation to them? Captain Vextra asked. The probe is trying, Sarah replied. It's showing them its own journey, how it evolved from classical to quantum states, how it learned to bridge both forms of existence. They seem fascinated, especially by our hybrid system. Cthol's crystals chimed softly, fascinated by primitive technology. Fascinated by adaptation. Sarah corrected, still reading the incoming data. They'd never seen anything like this before. Beings who can function across multiple states of reality, who maintain connections to simpler forms even as they advance. She looked up, a slight smile forming. We're as strange to them as they are to us. The entity's response came in a surge of quantum data that the probe struggled to translate. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. They're offering to help. They want to learn from us, to understand how we bridge different states of existence. And in return, Captain Vextra prompted, they can teach us how to modify our quantum technology to be more resilient, more adaptable. Sarah's voice grew excited. Captain, this isn't just first contact. This could revolutionize how we approach technological development throughout the galaxy. The captain's bioluminescence flickered thoughtfully, all because humanity never fully abandoned its primitive technology. Because we remember where we came from, Sarah said, her hands moving across the interfaces as she worked to maintain the connection. Every step of our journey into space, every crude tool and simple solution, it's all part of who we are. We don't just move forward, we bring our past with us. As if to emphasize her point, an ancient cooling fan whirred to life in one of her salvaged computers, its humble mechanical sound a counterpoint to the profound conversation taking place through its circuits. The quantum entities continued their transmission, sharing insights that would take years to fully understand, while the evolved Voyager probe faithfully translated between realities. The Galactic Council will never believe this, Dr. Ixel observed, their form stabilizing as the quantum interference began to decrease. First contact achieved through obsolete technology. They'll have to believe it, Thal replied, his crystalline form gradually regaining its luster. Every ship in the sector will confirm our success. Humanity's primitive solutions saved us all. Sarah looked around at her improvised command center, old Earth technology working alongside alien quantum systems, bridging the gap between past and future, between classical and quantum reality. The evolved Voyager probe, humanity's ancient messenger, had led them to this moment, proving that progress wasn't always about discarding the old for the new. You know what this means, she said, turning to Captain Vextra with a grin. The Nexus 7 is going to need a permanent retro computing section. Can't let all this good obsolete technology go to waste. The captain's bioluminescence had returned to full strength, showing patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. Indeed, perhaps it's time for all ships to remember that the simplest solutions are often the most reliable. She paused, her colors shifting to show respect. Humanity has taught us a valuable lesson, Technician Chen. Sometimes the best way forward is to remember how to look back. As Sarah continued to monitor the ongoing exchange between worlds, she thought about the Voyager probe's long journey through space. Launched with technology that would now be considered hopelessly primitive, it had evolved into something extraordinary, not by abandoning its origins, but by building upon them. In doing so, it had helped humanity prove that true advancement wasn't about replacing the old with the new, but about finding ways to make them work together. The future, it seemed, had plenty of room for the past after all.